Everyone feared the giant cowboy in the cage until a black widow said, "Will you give me strong children?" The dusty stagecoach wheezed to a stop in Perdition's Bend. Emily Carver stepped down, clutching a worn leather satchel and her late husband's pocket watch. The desert sun beat mercilessly on her dark skin as curious eyes followed her every move. Main Street stretched before her like a challenge. At its center stood something that made her pause. A massive iron cage dominated the thoroughfare. Inside sat a giant of a man, chains around his thick wrists. His presence seemed to bend the very air around him. Townspeople crossed to the opposite side of the street. Mothers pulled their children closer. Even the boldest cowboys gave the cage a wide berth. Sheriff Clyde hastily emerged from his office, thumbs hooked in his gun belt. His smile never reached his cold eyes. "That there's Jonah Barrett," he announced to Emily. "Dangerous killer. Murdered 3 men in a rage. We keep him caged for everyone's protection." The giant sat motionless. His eyes stared straight ahead, seeing nothing and everything. Emily approached the general store. The owner took one look at her and shook his head. No work, no credit, no welcome. The boarding house owner barely opened his door before slamming it shut. The saloon keeper pointed toward the road leading out of town. Night fell like a hammer. Emily found herself sleeping against a water trough, her satchel as a pillow. The stars offered no warmth. Her stomach gnawed at itself. Doc Addie Harper found her there at dawn, shivering and proud. His weathered face creased with something between pity and guilt. He jerked his head toward his medical office. Corner space, nothing more. She followed him inside. The office smelled of carbolic acid and secrets. For 3 days, Emily watched the giant in his cage. She observed everything. The way people avoided him, the fear in their whispers, the stories that changed with each telling. Something felt wrong about their terror. On the 4th morning, she pulled out her husband's final letter. His careful handwriting mentioned Perdition's Bend. It spoke of corruption and truth. Most importantly, it said the giant in the cage held the key to justice. Thomas Carver had died 2 months ago, supposedly killed by bandits on the road to this very town. But the dates troubled Emily. If Thomas died when they claimed, how had he known about the caged man? The pieces refused to fit together. Emily had learned long ago that broken puzzles usually meant someone was hiding pieces. She stood and walked toward the cage. The town held its breath. Emily stood before the massive cage. The giant's eyes lifted for the first time in days. She could feel the entire town watching from doorways and windows. "Will you give me strong children?" Her voice carried across Main Street like a gunshot. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. A woman dropped her basket. Children peeked around their mother's skirts. Sheriff hastily strode forward, his boots kicking up dust clouds. His face had turned the color of old leather. "Step away from that cage, woman. That beast ain't fit for civilized conversation." The giant's massive head turned toward Emily. His voice rumbled like distant thunder. "What manner of strength do you seek, woman?" Emily's spine straightened. Her chin lifted with quiet defiance. "The kind that builds rather than destroys, the kind that protects the innocent." Hastley's hand drifted toward his gun. His smile had vanished completely. "I'm warning you, move along before you cause trouble." Emily ignored him. Her eyes remained locked on the giant's face. Something flickered there. Recognition, understanding, hope. The crowd began to murmur. What kind of woman spoke to monsters? What did her strange question mean? Why wasn't she afraid? Doc Harper appeared at his office door. His hands trembled as he gripped the frame. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the morning chill. Emily walked back to the doctor's office. The crowd slowly dispersed, but their whispers followed her like smoke. Hastley watched her every step. His eyes held promises of trouble. That afternoon, Emily returned to the cage. She carried a tin cup of water and a piece of bread. The giant accepted both without words. "They say you killed 3 men. Men die for many reasons." His voice held no anger, no boasting, just a deep weariness that seemed older than his years. Emily visited again the next day, and the next. Each time she brought food or water. Each time the town watched with growing suspicion. The giant began to speak in riddles, biblical phrases that seemed to carry hidden meanings. The shepherds have become wolves, and the flock knows not whom to trust. Emily listened carefully. Her husband had taught her that truth often hid behind careful words. Hastley's patience wore thin. He confronted Emily outside the general store. "You're stirring up trouble with your visits. Vagrancy's a crime in this town. I have lodging with Doc Harper. For now, but vagrants have a way of moving on. Permanently." The threat hung in the air like desert heat. Emily met his stare without flinching. That evening, she searched Doc Harper's office while he tended a patient. Behind his medical books, she found a small wooden box. Inside lay her husband's personal effects: his silver pen, his leather notebook, his reading spectacles. Hastley had lied. He claimed these were bandit loot recovered from Thomas's murder scene. But why would a doctor have them? Emily confronted Harper when he returned. "These belong to my husband." The doctor's face went pale. His hands shook as he reached for his medicine bottle. Hastley brought them, said they needed to be examined. Medical evidence. His eyes couldn't meet hers. Guilt radiated from him like fever. Emily opened Thomas's notebook that night by candlelight. His journalistic shorthand filled every page. Notes about mail robberies, questions about missing travelers, suspicions about local law enforcement. The final entry made her blood run cold. Thomas had discovered a pattern. Mail coaches robbed on specific routes, always blamed on the same bandit gang. Never any survivors to tell different stories. He suspected Sheriff Hastley was stealing from the mail coaches himself, creating fictional bandit attacks to cover his crimes. Thomas's last note was a single line: "The giant knows the truth." Emily returned to the cage the next morning. The giant watched her approach with knowing eyes. "My husband wrote about you." Thomas Carver asked dangerous questions. Emily's heart stopped. The giant had known Thomas by name, but according to Hastley, Thomas died weeks before the giant was captured. "When did you last see him?" "The day they silenced his voice forever." The giant's words carried weight like stones. Emily understood now why he spoke in riddles. Truth was dangerous in Perdition's Bend. The shepherd struck down the lamb who would warn the flock. Emily translated slowly. Hastley had killed Thomas to protect his secret. She spent the afternoon walking the town's perimeter. Behind the old stable she found disturbed earth, fresh digging poorly concealed. Her husband's final clue led her here. She waited until nightfall. Using a rusty shovel, she dug carefully in the moonlight. 2 feet down, she struck something hard. A metal strongbox emerged from the dirt. Inside lay stacks of letters, mail that should have reached destinations across the territory. Letters with money inside. Business correspondence worth stealing. At the bottom of the box lay Thomas's camera and photographs. Images of Sheriff Hastley going through mail bags. Pictures of stolen goods hidden in the jail cellar. Emily's hands trembled as she held the proof. Her husband had died for this evidence. Now she understood why the giant remained caged. He was the witness Hastley couldn't kill without raising too many questions. Footsteps crunched behind her. She turned to find Hastley pointing a rifle at her chest. "Should have moved on when I warned you." Emily stared down the rifle barrel. Her mind raced through calculations learned long ago. Distance, angle, Hastley's nervous grip. "You won't shoot me here, too many questions." Hastley's eyes narrowed. His finger tightened on the trigger. "Accidents happen to nosy widows." Emily smiled. The expression caught him off guard. "I was never just a widow, Sheriff." She dove sideways as the rifle cracked. The bullet split air where she'd been standing. Emily rolled behind the water trough, clutching the strongbox. Her hand found the telegraph key hidden in her satchel. Muscle memory took over. Dots and dashes flew through her fingers. A message shot across the wires to the territorial marshal's office. Hastley rounded the trough, rifle raised. Emily was gone. She'd learned to move silently during the war. Union telegraph operators made prime targets for Confederate raiders. Survival meant speed and stealth. Emily reached the giant's cage as dawn broke. Jonah looked up from his chains. "The shepherd bares his fangs. Time to stop speaking in riddles. I know what you really are." Emily pulled out Thomas's photographs. Images of Jonah teaching children to read behind the old church. His gentle hands guiding small fingers across alphabet letters. "You're no killer. You're an educator. Jonah's massive shoulders sagged with relief. Someone finally saw the truth. I taught reading to any child who wanted to learn. Rich or poor, black or white, Hasely called it stirring up trouble. Emily understood now. Knowledge threatened men like Hasely. Educated people asked dangerous questions. My husband discovered your teaching methods. The coded Bible verses. Jonah nodded slowly. During the war years, he developed a system. Biblical passages that seemed like normal scripture, hidden beneath lay reading lessons for enslaved people seeking literacy. Each phrase contains information, names, dates, locations of Hasely's crimes. Emily pulled out paper and pencil. Her wartime code-breaking skills awakened like sleeping muscles. The shepherds have become wolves, she wrote quickly. Hasely murders travelers on the 15th of each month, when the mail coach carries army payroll. Jonah's eyes widened. She'd cracked his code in minutes. The flock knows not whom to trust. Harper falsifies death certificates, makes murder look like natural causes. More pieces fell into place. Thomas had stumbled onto a massive conspiracy. Hasely didn't just rob mail coaches. He eliminated anyone who grew suspicious. Your husband asked too many questions about missing travelers. Emily's pencil snapped. Thomas had died because he'd cared about truth, because he'd tried to protect innocent people. You witnessed Hasely kill him. Behind the old mill, Thomas fought bravely, but Hasely shot him from cover like a coward. Emily closed her eyes. Her husband had died alone, murdered by a man sworn to protect the innocent. Why didn't Hasely kill you too? Jonah gestured to his imposing frame, his reputation as a dangerous giant. Dead, I become a martyr. People ask questions. Alive and caged, I'm proof of his power. A monster he captured and controlled. The psychology was brilliant. Hasely turned Jonah's greatest weakness into his protection. Fear kept people from investigating too closely. But there's more. Hasely knows I taught literacy. He uses me as a warning. Education leads to trouble. Stay ignorant and stay safe. Emily felt pieces clicking together. Her journalist instincts, honed during years with Thomas, saw the bigger picture. Hasely wasn't just stealing money. He was controlling information, keeping the town afraid and uneducated, preventing anyone from developing the skills to expose him. The children you taught, where are they now? Jonah's face darkened. Several families had fled town after his arrest. Others forbade their children from reading altogether. Fear became his greatest weapon. Emily studied the photographs again. Thomas had documented everything, Hasely going through mail bags, stolen goods hidden in the jail, Doc Harper disposing of bodies in the desert. But the most damning image showed Hasely counting army payroll money, federal crime. The territorial marshal would have to act. My question about strong children, you understood the code. Jonah almost smiled, his first genuine expression since Emily arrived. You sought a partner in justice, someone to help build a better future through truth and education. Emily had learned military communications during the war. Women weren't allowed in combat, but they could operate telegraph equipment. She'd become expert at coded messages under enemy fire. I sent word to the territorial marshal last night. He'll arrive by noon. Hasely appeared at the far end of Main Street. He walked with purpose toward the cage. His rifle gleamed in the morning sun. The shepherd comes for the final harvest. Emily stood. Her war training had taught her timing, how to wait for the perfect moment. Not if the flock remembers how to fight back. Doc Harper emerged from his office. His medical bag shook in his trembling hands. Behind him came 3 townspeople, then 5, then a dozen. Emily had underestimated the power of truth. Once people saw through their fear, courage spread like wildfire. Hasely stopped in the middle of Main Street. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across his face. The territorial marshal's horse appeared on the horizon. Justice rode toward Perdition's Bend at last. Emily walked to the cage door as Hasely approached. Her hand reached for the heavy iron latch. The mechanism clicked. Nothing happened. She pushed harder. The latch moved freely, but the door remained closed. Emily examined the hinges more carefully. Rust covered the metal, but underneath lay something unexpected. The hinges were broken, had been for months. She looked at Jonah with new understanding. The giant sat in an unlocked cage. He could leave any time he chose. Why? Jonah's eyes moved toward the old schoolhouse at the edge of town. Emily followed his gaze. Small faces pressed against dirty windows. Children watching the confrontation with wide eyes. The shepherd threatened the lambs. Emily's blood chilled. Hastley had used the children as leverage. A school full of innocents held hostage by an invisible threat. He said if I ever left this cage, he'd burn the schoolhouse, with the children inside. The true horror became clear. Jonah's imprisonment wasn't legal punishment. It was moral blackmail of the cruelest kind. Emily had met monsters during the war, men who used fear as their primary weapon. But Hastley surpassed them all. He turned a good man's conscience into chains stronger than iron. How long have you known? Since the 3rd week. I tested the door one night, found it broken, realized he was counting on my honor to keep me trapped. The marshal rode closer. His horse kicked up dust clouds that obscured the horizon. Hastley glanced nervously between Emily and the approaching lawman. Doc Harper stepped forward from the growing crowd. His medical bag hung forgotten at his side. I can't do this anymore. His voice cracked like old leather. Years of guilt poured out in those simple words. What can't you do, Doc? Emily's question carried the weight of judgment. Harper's hands shook as he reached into his coat pocket. These. He pulled out a stack of death certificates, official documents bearing his signature and the territorial seal. Hastley made me falsify cause of death, said if I didn't cooperate, he'd tell everyone about my drinking, ruin my practice. Emily examined the papers. Natural causes, heart failure, accidental drowning, all lies covering up murder. Thomas Carver's certificate. Harper's face went gray. He shuffled through the papers with trembling fingers. Killed by bandits, but I never examined the body. Hastley wouldn't let me, said it was too damaged by scavengers. More pieces fell into place. Emily's journalist instincts connected the dots. Hastley had controlled every aspect of the cover-up, from the false death certificate to the planted evidence. Where did you really think my husband died? Behind the old mill, same place Hastley always did his dirty work, away from town, out of sight. Jonah nodded grimly. His massive frame seemed to shrink with remembered horror. I was teaching evening lessons to the Anderson children, heard the gunshots, found Thomas bleeding in the dirt. Emily's heart clenched. Her husband had died alone while she waited for his letters back home. He lived long enough to speak, made me promise to remember everything, said someday someone would come asking questions. What were his last words? Jonah's voice dropped to a whisper. Even now, months later, the memory carried power. Tell my Emily the truth will make them free. The cage holds more than one prisoner. Emily understood. Thomas had seen through Hastley's entire system. The sheriff didn't just imprison Jonah's body. He'd caged the whole town's spirit through fear and ignorance. The marshal drew closer. Emily could see his badge glinting in the morning sun. Time was running short. She turned to the crowd of townspeople, faces she'd seen over the past week. People who'd rejected her, dismissed her, treated her as less than human. How many of you lost family to mysterious bandit attacks? 3 hands rose slowly. Then 5. Then a dozen. How many of you sent letters or packages that never reached their destination? Nearly every hand went up. The pattern was clear once people looked for it. Hastley had been stealing their mail for years, killing anyone who asked too many questions, using their own fear to keep them silent. Mrs. Patterson, your son died on his way to Denver. What did the official report say? The elderly woman stepped forward. Her voice cracked with old grief. Bandit attack. But Johnny was carrying medicine money for his sick daughter, $300. The bandits supposedly took nothing. Emily nodded. Hastley had killed the young man for the money, then created a cover story that made no sense. Mr. Rodriguez, your brother disappeared last spring. The storekeeper's eyes filled with tears. His voice barely carried across the street. Miguel was asking questions about missing mail. Said someone in town was stealing army correspondence. Week later, he vanished. The territorial marshal was close enough now to hear voices. Hastley's time was running out. His desperation showed in every movement. Doc Harper pulled out more documents, financial records hidden in his medical files. Hasely paid me to stay quiet, $50 for every false death certificate, blood money that I should have refused. Emily examined the payment records, dozens of falsified documents, each representing a life stolen, a family destroyed. The moral cage that held Jonah extended far beyond the iron bars. It encompassed the entire town. Fear had made them all prisoners. The territorial marshal dismounted 50 yards from the cage. His weathered face surveyed the scene with practiced eyes. Badge and authority gleamed in the desert sun. Emily stepped forward, clutching the strongbox against her chest. The weight of evidence felt heavier than gold. "Marshal Thompson, I sent the telegraph." He nodded curtly. His gaze moved from Emily to Jonah to the growing crowd of townspeople. "You claimed federal mail theft and murder. These are serious charges." Hasely pushed through the crowd. His rifle remained conspicuously absent, playing the role of concerned lawman for the marshal's benefit. "Marshal, this woman's been stirring up trouble all week, making wild accusations against upstanding citizens." Thompson's cold eyes studied Hasely's face. 20 years of law enforcement had taught him to read guilt. "Then you won't mind if I examine her evidence." Emily opened the strongbox with steady hands. Months of planning had led to this moment. Thomas's sacrifice would not be wasted. The first item she presented was the stack of stolen mail, federal correspondence bearing official seals, Army payroll notifications, business documents worth thousands of dollars. Found buried behind the old stable, Sheriff Hasely's signature is on several of these items. The marshal examined the papers carefully. His expression darkened with each document. These letters were reported stolen in bandit attacks across 3 counties. Next came Thomas's photographs. Images of Hasely counting stolen money. Pictures of the sheriff going through mail bags in the dead of night. "My husband was a journalist investigating missing travelers. He documented everything before his murder." The marshal held each photograph up to the light. The images were clear and damning. Doc Harper stepped forward with shaking hands. His medical bag fell to the dust as he pulled out more evidence. "Falsified death certificates. Hasely forced me to lie about cause of death for dozens of victims." The stack of documents told a story of systematic murder and cover-up. Natural causes replacing bullet wounds. Accidents hiding deliberate killings. "This man died of heart failure according to your report, but look at this photograph." Emily showed the Marshal Thomas's final pictures. The same victim lay with a bullet hole clearly visible in his chest. Jonah stood slowly from his cage. His massive frame cast shadows across the gathered crowd. Freedom was within reach for the first time in months. "I witnessed Thomas Carver's murder. Sheriff Hasely shot him behind the old mill, made it look like a bandit attack." The marshal turned to Hasely. The sheriff's face had gone pale as desert bone. "Care to explain these discrepancies?" Hasely's mouth opened and closed like a landed fish. Decades of lies crumbled under the weight of evidence. "That woman's been filling people's heads with nonsense. Can't trust anything she says." Mrs. Patterson pushed through the crowd. The elderly woman's voice carried newfound strength. "My son Johnny died in a supposed bandit attack, but his money wasn't stolen. Makes no sense unless someone wanted him dead for other reasons." More townspeople stepped forward. Mr. Rodriguez spoke about his missing brother. The blacksmith mentioned strange activities around the jail at night. The baker recalled seeing Hasely with packages that didn't belong to him. Years of suppressed suspicions poured out like water through a broken dam. The marshal listened to each testimony with growing certainty. Emily pulled out the final piece of evidence. Thomas's journal with its detailed notes about Hasely's crimes. "My husband documented a pattern. Mail robberies timed to coincide with Army payroll shipments. Always the same bandit gang blamed. Never any survivors to contradict the official story." The marshal read Thomas's careful observations. Professional journalism combined with methodical investigation. "This journal contains enough evidence to hang a dozen men." Hasely backed away from the crowd. His hand moved instinctively toward his empty holster. "You can't prove any of this. Just the word of troublemakers and degenerates." "I can prove it." The voice came from an unexpected source. Mrs. Henderson, the banker's wife, stepped forward with a leather portfolio. My husband kept records of unusual deposits. Sheriff Hastley made large cash payments every month, always right after reported bandit attacks. She opened the portfolio to reveal bank statements and deposit slips, financial evidence that connected Hastley directly to the stolen money. The marshal had seen enough. His hand moved to the handcuffs on his belt. "Clyde Hastley, you're under arrest for mail theft, murder, and conspiracy." Hastley turned to run. The crowd blocked his path. Townspeople who'd cowered in fear now stood firm against tyranny. "You don't understand. I kept order in this town. Without me, chaos would reign." Emily laughed bitterly. The sound carried no humor. Order built on murder and theft isn't order. It's oppression. The marshal snapped handcuffs around Hastley's wrists. Metal clicked with the sound of justice finally served. Doc Harper collapsed onto a nearby bench. Years of guilt and fear drained from his shoulders like poison from a wound. "I'll testify to everything, every falsified document, every covered-up murder. No more lies." Jonah pushed open his cage door. The broken hinges squealed in protest, but the barrier finally gave way. He stepped onto Main Street as a free man. The crowd parted respectfully. Their monster had become their liberator. Fear transformed into gratitude and shame. Emily watched the transformation with satisfaction. Truth had set them all free. 6 months later, the iron cage that once dominated Main Street had disappeared. In its place stood wooden desks arranged in neat rows. Children's laughter replaced the whispers of fear that had haunted Perdition's Bend for years. Emily walked between the desks, checking arithmetic problems and reading exercises. Her teacher's dress was simple but clean. Respect had replaced the hostility she'd faced upon arrival. Jonah stood at the blackboard, his massive hands surprisingly gentle as he guided a young student through alphabet letters. The same fingers that townspeople once feared now shaped young minds with infinite patience. "Miss Carver, I finished my reading assignment." Little Sarah Patterson held up her slate with pride. The same girl who'd hidden behind her grandmother's skirts now sought Emily's approval eagerly. "Excellent work, Sarah. Your grandmother would be proud." Mrs. Patterson had become the school's strongest supporter after learning the truth about her son's death. Grief had transformed into determination to honor his memory through education. The territorial court had sentenced Hastley to 20 years in federal prison. Doc Harper received a suspended sentence in exchange for his testimony and commitment to ethical practice. Justice had been served through law rather than vengeance. Emily had surprised everyone by accepting the town council's offer to become sheriff. Her investigative skills and moral authority made her a natural choice for maintaining order. More importantly, she'd insisted Jonah serve as her deputy. The giant's reputation for wisdom and fairness had grown as people learned his true character. The school served children regardless of background or family status. Rich and poor sat side by side, learning letters and numbers with equal enthusiasm. Jonah's old teaching methods proved invaluable for reaching students others had given up on. Emily had discovered teaching came naturally to her. Years of working with Thomas on newspaper articles had developed her ability to explain complex ideas simply. The children responded to her patient guidance and unwavering standards. The town itself had undergone remarkable transformation. Main Street bustled with legitimate commerce instead of fearful whispers. New families moved in as word spread about Perdition's Bend's renewal. Doc Harper had established a free clinic alongside the school. His medical skills, no longer compromised by corruption, served the community with renewed dedication. Sobriety and honest work had restored his self-respect. The former site of Jonah's cage now hosted the school's playground. Emily had insisted they convert the iron bars into swings and climbing equipment. Symbols of oppression became tools for joy and growth. A wooden sign above the school's entrance read, "Thomas Carver Memorial School." Emily's husband had died seeking truth. Now his sacrifice educated future generations about the importance of justice and moral courage. The town council had also renamed Main Street to Carver Avenue. Every day, people walked past a reminder that one man's commitment to truth had changed everything. Emily kept Thomas's pocket watch in her desk drawer. Sometimes during quiet moments, she'd hold it and remember their shared dreams of making the world more just through honest reporting. Jonah had developed new coded teaching methods that helped struggling students master difficult concepts. His wartime experience teaching literacy in secret proved invaluable for reaching children others considered hopeless. The school's success attracted attention from neighboring communities. Other towns sent delegations to study their integrated education model. Emily and Jonah found themselves inadvertently leading a regional reform movement. Federal authorities had recovered thousands of dollars in stolen mail and property. Much of the money went toward school supplies and teacher salaries. Crime's profits now funded justice's future. Emily stood before the assembled children as afternoon lessons concluded. Their eager faces reflected hope and possibility that had been impossible under Hastley's regime. Remember what we learned today about courage. It's not the absence of fear. It's doing what's right despite being afraid. The children nodded solemnly. These lessons went beyond reading and arithmetic. Emily was teaching them to think critically and stand up for justice. As students filed out, Emily and Jonah remained behind to prepare tomorrow's lessons. The giant's transformation from feared prisoner to beloved teacher remained the town's most remarkable change. "Are you satisfied with our strong children?" Jonah's question referred back to Emily's original coded inquiry. Her answer had grown more meaningful with each passing day. "They're growing stronger every day. Strong minds questioning everything. Strong hearts caring for others. Strong spirits that won't accept injustice." Emily walked to the window overlooking the playground. Children of different backgrounds played together without the artificial barriers that had divided their parents. The evening sun cast long shadows across Carver Avenue. Soon these children would inherit the town and surrounding territory. They would carry forward the lessons learned from their community's dark period. Jonah joined her at the window. His presence no longer frightened anyone. Instead, people sought his counsel on difficult problems and moral dilemmas. The strongest foundation is built on truth, and truth is what we shall teach them. Emily smiled as she watched their students head home to families who no longer lived in fear. Thomas would have been proud of what his sacrifice had accomplished. And that is all to the story for now. Please let me know where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will create a story there. Consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. And if you enjoy our content, click this video on your screen. I promise you it's worth watching. See you tomorrow.